What's up, guys, and welcome to the NFL Week 6 player pool. Going to be going over the games for the NFL Week 6 slate, main slate on DraftKings. And there are a lot of cheap guys that are going a little bit overlooked that I think that can help us get in some of those studs in some of these high-scoring games, and I'll get into it right after this. What's up, guys? Simon Edwards at PumaCom here with Heatseeker Sports, and you're watching Player Pool. It is Sunday morning around midnight. I've been up studying this slate, and I've come up with a lot of plays that, like comparing the ownership percentages to guys that were standing out on my spreadsheet or guys that might have matchup advantages and stuff. I'm not seeing a lot of ownership on them. And I think that they can help us get in some of these studs from some of these higher scoring games. And I'll get into that in a minute and build some lineups for DraftKings contests. Before I do that, make sure to hit the like button, looking for 30 likes to put out a shorter video later on. And make sure to subscribe to the channel. I'm looking for 2,000 subscribers before the end of the season. I'm at about a little over 1,000 right now. And, I want to try to get to around 1,100 before next week's game. So if you can help me out there, I definitely appreciate that. I probably need about 70 to hit that goal. So definitely hit that subscribe button because you're going to want to sign up for the alerts for when the shorter videos come out, especially for the main slate videos. My shorter videos have been hitting with a lot of these picks. Last week, I had Joe Burrow and T. Higgins in my in my lineup, and also I think Josh Jacobs. I can't remember if he hit too much or not last week, but had some good plays in there. And just in general, these main short videos have been hitting, and you definitely want to sign up for alerts to make sure that you're getting the notifications when those videos are posted, because I usually post them around an hour before lock or so, and not a set time or anything like that. So you're going to want to hit an alert for when those things come out. Also, I have a sponsorship with Underdog, and I started doing this week. I'm going to be giving away 4 pick'em plays for Underdog. I put out a short video with these picks on them, but I'll give them to you guys right now too. Make sure to sign up for an Underdog account using the promo code SEEK. That's SEEK. And you're going to get a up to $1,000 match. It's a 50% deposit bonus for up to $1,000. So if you deposit $2,000, you'll get a $1,000 match, which is really good, especially these days where it's hard to come by with like these DFS companies or like best ball companies in Underdog's case as well, where you can get that type of a deposit bonus. So make sure to do that. I'll show you right now what I have for this week's picks. As you can see on the screen I'm sharing, Tyjae Spears. I liked his higher on 7.5 rushing attempts. He's been getting about 40% of the rushing attempts for the Titans lately, and the team that he's up against this week. Who are they up against this week? They're up against the Colts, and the Colts have been giving up 28 runs per game. So you figure if he's getting 40% target or running share of 28 runs, then he's going to, pretty easily cross that 7.5 rushing attempt number. And Tyjae had a good game last week. I wouldn't anticipate him losing that share of the backfield. Jahmyr Gibbs, I have him over 60.5 rushing yards. He's going against Dallas this week. That game should be a high-scoring game, and I anticipate Gibbs getting a lot of work in that one. Dallas is giving up 135 yards per game to the running back position, and obviously he splits the backfield with David Montgomery. But if you figure, maybe they split that backfield evenly, he's still crossing 60.5 rushing yards if they hit that 135 yards per game mark against Dallas. Michael Wilson is another guy that I like. I like his higher than 3.5 receptions. Give me my reasoning here. Wilson has 20% or more of the team targets the past 3 weeks, according to Rich Rebar. And after opening this year with a 6.5 and 9.5 mark, he's moved up to 20% target share. And I like that 3.5 over receptions on underdog, as that is something that he has hit in the last 2 games. Let's see. 22% team targets, 3.5 receptions in 2 of the last 3 when his target rate has gone up. So he's crossed that 3.5 mark for 2 of the 3 games where he's hit that 20% target share mark. So that's what I liked about Michael Wilson in a game where they should be throwing a decent amount against Green Bay. Anticipate, Green Bay not to have too much difficulty against that Arizona defense, which will keep Arizona throwing the ball in this one. I also like the Mike Evans lower than 7.5 targets. I like that because, Mike Evans has not hit 4 targets against the Saints in 4 years. Last time he had more than 4 targets against the Saints was in 2020. So even that, I think, was 6 targets. So he didn't even cross 7.5 targets. So that 7.5 targets mark is crazy. That's a crazy value on underdog to hit the lower on that. So I like the lower on that particular prop, and I think it can get us a decent foursome with these 4 picks here. If you're a new depositor on underdog, you also have a 5th one that you can add in there, which would be Joe Burrow over 0.5 total yards. So that'll get you a 5th pick in this setup. And this particular, 4 picks will get you 12 times your money. I put $30 on it. So if I win about $360. So we'll see how that goes. But I think there's good reasoning behind these picks. And, I think just based on the research that I did and looking up their histories and everything like that, I do think that these are solid picks for this week. And now let's get into the DraftKings slate. Make sure to hit that like button. Again, I'm looking for 30 likes to put out a shorter video later on. And make sure to subscribe to the channel so that you can sign up for alerts for when that shorter video comes on. So I'll start digging into this slate here. The first game is the one that I like the most on this slate. I really like this Baltimore versus Washington game. I think it's going under-owned, surprisingly. I'm seeing, at least on the Washington side, I'm seeing not a whole lot of ownership on Jaden Daniels, which I would have expected. Most of it's going to Lamar Jackson. He's 18.5% ownership projected. Jaden Daniels falls under 10%, which I really like. I like the Jaden side better than the Lamar side in this one. I think Lamar is a good play, but I think given the discount in price and the discount in ownership, and I anticipate Jaden Daniels to be throwing a ton in this one, based on, Brian Robinson is out. They're going to be playing in a game where they're going to want to take Derrick Henry out of the game. So they're going to be wanting to throw the ball quickly, and they're going to be wanting to try to jump out to an early lead. I anticipate them trying to be aggressive. And Jaden Daniels, as you can see, 3 straight games, 4 out of 5 games over 20 DraftKings points, and he's had 3 out of 5 over 25 DraftKings points 7,300 salary. I anticipate Jaden Daniels having a good game in this one. He's facing a Baltimore defense that is giving up 20.4 DraftKings points a game to the quarterback position, and all the receiving positions also benefit from this matchup against Baltimore. Wideouts are getting 24.7 DraftKings points, slots are getting 17.9 DraftKings points, and tight ends are getting 14 DraftKings points. So everybody on Washington benefits from this matchup, except for the running back position, which we don't care about because Brian Robinson's out anyways. McNichols is the backup as far as the running backs go, and McNichols at 4,500 is tempting. He got 10 DraftKings points last week. He only had 7 attempts. He had 8 attempts the week before that. I do like Eckler better because I like the passing game in this one. And Eckler has, despite having a running quarterback, he's actually gotten a decent amount of targets. He had, actually, he had 2 targets, 3 targets, 4 targets. So maybe not a decent amount, but they've had huge leads in a lot of these games. So Eckler, like I don't mind adding him in as, like part of like if you want to get like a 3-way stack going on there and you want to pair Eckler in with Jaden Daniels. I kind of like that. On top of the extra work he should get in the running game, although the running matchup is not good. The pass game matchup is a little bit better against Baltimore. So that's what I am liking about Eckler. He's not one of my favorite plays on the slate, but I do like adding him in, like when I need to get that extra passing weapon for Jaden Daniels if I want to double stack him. Let's take a look now at Lamar Jackson. Go back to Lamar Jackson. 37 DraftKings points, 24, 25, and 29. So he's very similar to Jaden Daniels. He has 3 out of the 5 is over 25 DraftKings points. 4 out of the 5 is over 20 DraftKings points. This game is, I don't think it's getting enough attention or like enough ownership at least. A lot of people are running Lamar Jackson naked. I would imagine they're running him with Zay Flowers as well. Derrick Henry is getting less ownership because of that. Also because of his price. He's $8K on DraftKings. You see Derrick Henry 2 out of the 5 weeks over 33 DraftKings points. He has a soft matchup this week against Washington. Washington's given up 22.5 DraftKings points a game to the running back position. Teams have been passing on Washington this year because Washington has been just a juggernaut when it comes to offense this year. And Washington just in general had that really poor passing defense anyways. But, everyone benefits on the Baltimore side as well, which lends even more to the shootout potential of this game. 18.4 to the quarterback position, 22.9 to wideouts, 17.7 to the slot. Tight ends do not benefit. So I don't like the tight ends necessarily in this game, but that could also be a, like the tight ends that have faced Washington. I don't have the list in front of me, but only 6.6 points per game allowed to the tight end position from the Washington side. So I do like just about everybody in this game. I like all the receivers on Baltimore. I think Zay Flowers should get the most ownership. We'll take a look at Zay Flowers. Flowers is a guy, though, that he doesn't really ever cross that 22 points. Like, I think maybe he's crossed that like once in his career. And at 6,500, like it's about a 4, like less than a 4x. He's expensive. I think I prefer to go with other options. I'm not saying to not use Flowers. He could easily cross that with enough targets, and there should be volume tonight or on Sunday. So Bateman, I like Bateman a lot this week as well. Look at the targets that Bateman's been getting. this season, 8 targets last week. Bateman was a guy that people were really high on a couple years ago. Last year, when Flowers came into the league, it kind of took away some of Bateman's steam. But this year, it's looking like he's getting targets again. 5 targets, 4 targets, 4 targets. Only 1 target against Buffalo, but then 8 targets. That Buffalo game, they were blowing out Buffalo, though. So keep that in mind. But Bateman is a guy that I like as well, and he's much cheaper at 4,100. Bateman's one of these cheap guys that I think can help us out, getting us exposure to this game, but also getting us opportunity to get in studs in other spots. So Bateman, good pivot off of Trey Tucker as well. Trey Tucker, a lot of people are going to be on him because the Vegas Raiders are in a situation where Jacoby Myers is out, Devontae Adams is out. Like there's very few places for them to turn. Even Zamir White was questionable. It's looking like he's going to play now, but very few options other than Brock Bowers for the Raiders. But like with all the ownership on Trey Tucker, that gives us a nice pivot here. Rashad Bateman at a similar price in a high scoring game, unlike that Vegas game. Diami Brown has a good matchup on the Washington side. He hasn't gotten a lot of targets, but he's really good against man coverage, which is what I like about him in his matchup this week. Give you an idea, the Commanders, the Ravens run the 8th most man coverage in the league, and Diami Brown has 25 targets or 25 routes run against man coverage. He's got a 20% target share. He ranks 6th, according to PFF, among wide receivers in fantasy points per route run and 7th in yards per route run against man coverage. So couple interesting things there with Diami Brown in this matchup where I anticipate that Washington is going to be throwing the ball a lot. I also like Luke McCaffrey with that 17.9 DraftKings points that Baltimore's giving up to the slots. I just think all these guys are in play. Washington and Baltimore are going to give you plenty of cheap options to turn to. Like when you're wanting to fade some of those chalkier guys, and there's really not a ton of ownership on a lot of these guys where there should be. Terry McLaurin is at about 10% ownership himself, and Terry McLaurin is in a great matchup in this one. You can see that recently he's been getting those targets. He started off a little bit sluggish with 17 yards and 22 yards. It was looking like he was going to be a bust this season, but then he broke out against Cincinnati, and he's had 200 yards games since then. Touchdowns, he scored a couple touchdowns already, but yeah, I would anticipate Terry McLaurin to be busy in this game against Baltimore, and he's got a good matchup, and he's affordable at 6,400. I do like Terry McLaurin quite a bit this week, and I think he's a good stacking partner for our Jaden Daniels stacks. Zach Ertz, another guy that has a good matchup on the Washington side. 8 targets last week. He's had 4+ targets in 4 out of 5 weeks. He's at 3,700. Not a huge fan of Zach Ertz. We see the targets have not led to much fantasy production, but all it takes is like a touchdown to kind of break out of that funk. And against Baltimore, Baltimore's allowing 14 DraftKings points a game to the tight end position. That is, the second highest amount on this slate, right behind Indy, which is allowing 15.2, but you could go Chigakonkwo in that matchup, but I would rather go with Zach Ertz and use him as a like secondary stacking partner if you want to double stack Jaden Daniels and maybe get a punt tight end in there to get some correlation, but also to punt the position. Tight ends have not been scoring a ton of points this year, unless you want to pay up for guys like Brock Bowers this week, or guys like that. I can't think of anyone else off the top of my head. Defense, not interested in defense in this one. You could put in Likely or Andrews. It's kind of shown that Likely is running more routes than Andrews this year. Looks like he's kind of more favored in the passing game. So I don't hate Likely, taking a flyer on him at 4,500 too. So lots to like in this game, and it's gonna be my favorite game to stack this week. Arizona at Green Bay is also a good game. We're looking at a total of 47.5. All it takes is one extra touchdown for this to cross the total of the Baltimore-Washington game, which was 51.5 points. Baltimore was 6.5-point favorites in that game, by the way. Gives more credence to maybe starting Derrick Henry on the Baltimore side and then the Jaden Daniels stacks. But Green Bay versus Arizona, we're looking at a 47.5-point total. Green Bay are 5.5-point favorites in this one. Green Bay, like a lot of green on their matchup. I see the quarterbacks are getting 18.3 DraftKings points. Running backs are getting 23.6 DraftKings points. And, middling for wideouts, 18.9 DraftKings points. Middling for slots, 13.8 DraftKings points. But I think in general in this matchup, the guys that I like, I think Jordan Love's getting a little too expensive for me in this matchup. I would rather use like one-offs, I think, in this game. But I certainly, definitely don't mind, stacking it if you wanted to stack the game. Kyler Murray could have a big game at any point, and so could Jordan Love, as we've seen. They are playing this one at Green Bay. Kyler Murray, 2 out of 5 weeks over 25 DraftKings points. Jordan Love, when he's, when he's been healthy, he's done decent. Like week 4 against Minnesota, 34 DraftKings points against Philly, 17, and Rams, 17 as well. Give you an idea of what Jordan Love has done. His favorite target is Jaden Reed. We had some drama last week with Romeo Doubs, and that set us up for a decent matchup with Jaden Reed versus the Rams. He had a huge reception on one of the early plays in the game, but then he just disappeared. The 2 times I've used him before that, I recommended him last week. I recommended him against Minnesota, and I recommended him also against Philly. But this week, I think he's good for a one-off. The problem is now look at his salary compared to what it was in those past games. Against Minnesota, he was a 6K. Against Philly, it was 5,400. And again, last week against the Rams, when I recommended him, he was 6,500. But now he's 7K. And this is a game where, I'm not really feeling this game as much as I'm feeling the Baltimore versus Washington game. So I'm not really on Jaden Reed so much this week, but I don't hate the play. Jaden Reed gets Doubs back to take away some of that attention too, which I like. Doubs was dealing with some probably mental fatigue issues. Skipped a couple practices last week, and he got suspended for the game. But it seems like he's going through some issues. But hopefully he gets that cleared out. But Doubs at 5,200, it's good to have him back in the lineup because that will take some of the attention away from Reed if you're liking those Reed plays. And also Wicks failed last week, 4 DraftKings points. So, using Wicks ended up being a disaster last week in an easy matchup against the Rams. So just bust in general from the Packers. People are probably a little worn out on him. So take that for what it is with the ownership play. Marvin Harrison, 7,200. Like, this dude is just too expensive for his output. He's had 1 week where he scored 32 DraftKings points, but obviously we know his upside and his targets that he's getting. But, he's got to prove it a little bit more. There was a lot of talk in week 1 about how his routes were like lazy, or his routes, not lazy on Harrison's part, but lazy on, the offensive coordinator's part. And, he's just not fooling anybody as a rookie. So until that straightens itself out, Harrison's probably going to be in this boom bust type of situation. But at 7,200, I don't want to pay up for that. Although, anything, I'm not, like saying if you want to start him, don't start him. But I'm just staying away from it this week. McBride is in a decent matchup this week too, with Green Bay giving up 13.1 DraftKings points a game to the tight end position. Guy I might like the most in this game might be, where's he at? Mike Wilson. I had him, as you saw, on my underdog picks. But look at these targets: 6 targets, 7 targets, 9 targets the last 3 games. That's when he's been getting that 20% target share. Uh, he hasn't gotten the touchdown yet, but you add a touchdown to this 14 DraftKings point score, this 12 DraftKings point. We're talking about 20 DraftKings points for a guy with a $4,600 salary. That's enough to get us there. 4,600. That's in that Trey Tucker range again. Let's see what Michael Wilson's ownership is. This is going to be another guy that gets us that. He's under 6%. This is another one of these cheap guys that's going to give us a pivot off these other cheap guys that are chalkier. So, who would you rather start? Michael Wilson in a potential, high scoring game against Green Bay, or would you rather start, Trey Tucker, who, is going to get probably double digit targets, but in a crappy matchup? As far as Trey Tucker's matchup, we're looking against Pittsburgh's passing defense. So I'm not incredibly thrilled about that matchup, even with the volume he's going to be getting. When Michael Wilson could get 8 quality targets versus Trey Tucker's like 10 plus targets from Aiden O'Connell. So give you an idea of Wilson there as another cheap option to go to. Let's see, Houston versus New England. This game I'm largely passing on. I don't like the splits for Stroud on the road. And on top of that, Nico Collins is gone. Volume's going to be going to Diggs, and it's going to be going to Dell. And I also think Schultz will be an overlooked play as well. Diggs has been running a lot more outside routes, or at least he ran a lot more outside routes. He'd been largely in the slot. When Collins went out, Diggs went to the outside. I don't know if that means that Dell is going to be taking more slot routes. If that's the case, you're looking at New England matchup. New England is giving up 15.4 DraftKings points a game to the slot, which is a top 10 matchup to get. So I like that matchup for Dell if he's in the slot. Tight ends have been getting 10.5 DraftKings points a game versus New England. Schultz could see a lot more work for that intermediate middle part of the field if Diggs is out wide and Dell, remains out wide. So Schultz, I like Schultz this week. And we see he got 6 targets last week, 5 the week before that, 5 the week before that. You bump that up to maybe 8 targets, and maybe he gets a touchdown this week. Schultz at 4,100. could get you around 20 DraftKings points. That's a good return on that investment. And Schultz would be, let's see what his ownership is. Schultz will get you exposure to that game. He's got under 5% ownership. Let's see what Tank Dell is. Tank Dell's pretty cheap too. He's at under 10%. Stefan Diggs. Diggs is also, like, all these guys are pretty cheap. Considering Nico Collins is out, and considering the matchup against the Patriots, I think these guys are pretty cheap. We should see Mixon back in this week as well. Coming off a high ankle sprain, though, I don't really want a ton of exposure to Mixon if he's back. I don't like these running backs coming off of high ankle sprains, but I really liked him in week 1. He came through for us with like 30 DraftKings points. Week 2 is where he suffered that ankle sprain. There was a hip tackle, and comes back this week recovering from that high ankle sprain or whatever. I think it was a medial, maybe, ankle sprain, something weird, but not an injury that's quick to come back from. So not a fan of Mixon, even though it's a really good matchup with New England giving up 24.3 DraftKings points a game to the running back position. Let's move on to Tampa Bay versus New Orleans. This is an interesting game. Just take a drink real quick here. This is an interesting game because we got someone on the New Orleans side with Derek Carr out. We're looking at Spencer Rattler. Obviously hasn't played. I think he was drafted this year. But Spencer Rattler, he was one of those college guys that was pretty decent. I don't watch a lot of college, but he's a pretty athletic guy, and he's only 4K. So he's only 4K. He's in a good matchup against Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay is allowing 22 DraftKings points a game to the quarterback position, 23.5 to the running back position. If Rattler does a little bit of running as well, sets him up really well. Wide receivers, 23.1 against Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay's defense sucks this year, giving up 16.9 DraftKings points a game to the slot. Really good matchup for Spencer Rattler. And, Rattler should have some ownership. He's coming in under 10%, but for like a guy who's never started, rookie quarterback, it's pretty high at around like 9% or whatever it is. But Rattler could be interesting at 4K. You can do a lot of fun stuff with your lineups, and I will get into that when we get into the lineup build. As far as other guys on the team, let's see. Kamara has that 23.5 DraftKings points. Kamara might be a good stacking partner for Rattler because Rattler's going to want to, dump it off a lot. The other problem with the Saints is like they're missing like half their offensive line. That's another, negative for Rattler, and they like to blitz a lot on Tampa Bay's side, but they should be able to get to this this rookie here. But there's a lot to like about the matchup on the Saints side. If you wanted to stack Rattler with a guy, Olave's expensive at 6,600. Shaheed, though, is at 5,600. And, Shaheed has been on fire. Considering his workload, I think that 5,600 is really cheap. 9 targets, 11 targets. He's just been on fire this entire season. He's legit. I've liked him for a couple years now. I can't remember if he started last year or the year before that, but I've been a fan of Shaheed from Showdown exposure. when I look for those cheap showdown plays, and Shaheed stuck out there. That's when I first started noticing him, and he's just one of those wide receivers that can really deliver you a really good game. Other than that, Mike Evans has that matchup with Lattimore. That's why I like his under prop on that 7.5, or his under pick on that 7.5 on underdog, because hasn't gotten more than 4 targets since 2020. We can see if I got his thing. Yeah, I got his tab called up here. Look at this history against Lattimore. It's a famous matchup. Like, he's been ejected twice in these matchups against Lattimore. But look at this: 4 targets, 3 targets, 4 targets, 4 targets, 1 target, 4 targets, 6 targets in 2020 is the closest he came to 7. Last time he had over 7.5 was in 2019. So I don't know how the line is 7.5 targets against New England. In that underdog contest. I mean, but that's basically a free pick. So keep that in mind. Make sure to use that promo code SEEK, SEEK, and get that $1,000 deposit bonus. Who else we got? Godwin would probably be the guy that I'd lean on for the Tampa Bay side. They're giving up only 11 DraftKings points a game to the slot receiver. So, in general, I just don't like anyone on Tampa Bay except for the running back I'll get to in a second. Otten is another guy that's interesting. Otten, with the Saints giving up 12.5 DraftKings points a game to the tight end position. Otten has gotten 4 targets, 9 targets, 8 targets. So he's capable of getting a big workload. And if we anticipate Mike Evans to be shut down in this game, like, I would not be surprised to see that tick up towards that 8 target mark. Looking at him at a $3,500 salary, another cheap option for us this week. Maybe he gets a touchdown. Wouldn't be surprised about that. That bumps him up to around like 19 DraftKings points. So keep that in mind with Otten. Like, he's a decent play this week. Bucky Irving, one of my favorite plays on the slate. Bucky Irving gets his backfield to himself, basically. He's an athletic guy. I was watching some, I think, like one of these coaches, maybe Gruden or Belichick. They were talking about how when Bucky Irving gets the ball, the entire Tampa Bay, sideline is standing up and watching, because they know, he can break off a play at any point, and they're excited to watch him play. Bucky Irving finally gets an opportunity to have this backfield to himself. Rachaad White is doubtful, leaning towards he's doubtful, so he's likely not to play. And Bucky Irving's not going to have a whole lot of competition for touches in that backfield. And in a game where they are playing against a rookie quarterback, they're only 3.5 point favorites, at least when I let me check and see where their line is at now, because I'm not really buying that they're only 3.5 point favorites against a rookie quarterback. I did my spreadsheet earlier in the week, so let me double check and see what the what the spread's looking like now. So the spread is 3.5 points, still 3.5 points. So, so 3.5 points, but home favorites, or are they playing at home? Let me double check that. No, they're playing in New Orleans, so not home favorites, but they're favorites in the game. But Bucky Irving, really like him in this matchup. I think whether it's the passing game or the run game, he should be involved. 3 targets, 2 targets, 2 targets. Decent matchup. should get a heavy workload, and they're playing against a rookie with no offensive line. See if McCoy is still out on the offensive line. And take a quick look at the Saints injury report here. Give you guys an idea of what we're looking at for these Saints. All right, so let's switch over to this tab. If we're looking at the injury report, a couple of these guys didn't partake in the walkthrough. Willie Gay, full practice linebacker. Obviously, that doesn't affect the offensive line. Let me find a better freaking source of this injury information. All right, so with the Bucks, we're looking at Ernest Brown is out. William Golston is out. And Luke Gadecki is out. All those guys are out for the Bucks. Their center, Graham Barton, did not practice all week. Let's get to the Saints here. All right, Derek Carr's out. Willie Gay looks like he's going to be back this week. Will Harris is out. Taysom Hill is also out. McCoy must have been put on IR or something, because I don't see him on this list. Let's see. Let's see. All right, Eric McCoy is. Oh yeah, he's having groin surgery, so he's probably still out. He's on IR. So yeah, Saints are still going to be struggling on their offensive line. When McCoy went out, that's when their offense, was humming in the beginning. And when McCoy went out and lost Carr that protection, Carr does not perform well under pressure. Maybe Spencer Rattler will be better under pressure than Carr. So it might be an upgrade, at least for a, like playing under pressure. But yeah, Carr just crumbles under pressure. Like he was on fire the first game and a half or whatever until McCoy went out, and then he just started crumbling. But Rattler and Irving are basically my favorite plays. Long story short, on that game, Cleveland versus Philly. This is a game where we get A.J. Brown back. We get Devontae Smith back. Good matchup for Jalen Hurts in this one. I think we're missing some key components of that Cleveland defense. Ward was questionable. It's almost 1:00 right now, so let's see if we've gotten an update on that. See how good this matchup is looking for us now. All right, so I'm going to go to the Browns injury report. Chubb still out. Hudson, offensive tackle, injured reserve. Hurst, questionable. Diabate, questionable. Center's out. Hicks, questionable. Ward, still questionable. So I haven't really gotten an update on Ward. but there's something. The safeties, a couple safeties are out. And Cleveland plays a ton of man coverage, which Hurts plays well against. I think one of the things that I like more about there's going to be a ton of our ownership on Hurts this week, and the matchup is good, like with some of these injuries, but the matchup that I like better in this game, and I think it's a good pivot for us because he's too expensive and people aren't going to be trying to jam him in their lineups when they should. Cleveland's given up 21 DraftKings points a game to the running back position. And I like Barkley a ton in this game. We've seen Barkley hit over that 35 mark a couple times. He's 8,200. So he's going to be difficult to squeeze in. You can get him in there with Jaden Daniels lineups because I've built a few lineups that I really like that have both these guys in there. But I'll give you an idea of the ownership on Barkley this week. Barkley's looking at under 10% owned in a matchup where he should do really well against Cleveland. I like Barkley a ton. A ton in this one. So definitely recommend trying to get Barkley in your lineups. Other than that, the slots against Philly is a target, like a position I've targeted all year. But Jerry Jeudy is just such a hard guy to get into your lineup. He's a goofball. He's at 5K. So I'm making a fool out of himself with Steve Smith last year. Comes over to the Browns, 9 targets, 7 targets, 6 targets, 8 targets. He hasn't done anything with all those targets. On top of Deshaun Watson just being a bust this year, Jerry Jeudy has been a bust as well. Cooper has a good matchup against Philly, but he can't catch the ball this year. He had one big week, but Cooper, another guy who's interesting. But when you put these guys into your lineup, you're risking just busting your whole lineup. That's the problem with these Cleveland guys. And I've kind of been burned too many times by them, even though Watson has 18.2 DraftKings points a game is what the quarterbacks are getting from Philly. Looking at a 42.5 point total in this one, by the way, with Philly as 8.5 point favorites. Another reason to like Saquon in this one. They're playing at home as well in Philly. But the slots are getting 22.5, 22.2 DraftKings points. That's Judy's matchup, and I just don't trust Judy. 19.4 is what Cooper is getting. I say I don't trust Judy, but don't be surprised if you see, Judy put up a big line tomorrow against Philly in that slot position that I usually target against Philly. So if you want to run back for Barkley, Judy would be another option there at 5K, another cheap guy in that Trey Tucker range, another cheap guy in that trade. There's lots of guys in that Trey Tucker range that could outscore him pretty easily in that Raiders game where all the attention is going to be on him. This Trey Tucker, just there's a lot of different ways to go, so you don't have to get stuck with that. Playing that chalky play. All right, let's move on to the next game. And don't get me wrong, though. Trey Tucker, he's going to have a ton of opportunity. He could easily have a big game. But if you want to get away from that, there's plenty of options here. All right, Indy versus Tennessee. This one, we are looking at a 43.5 point total. Tennessee are 2.5-point favorites in this one. Looking like we're going to lose Joe Flacco. I really liked Joe Flacco last week. The rain took me off of him, which is why I pivoted to the Cincy game. Ended up being a good pivot, but Joe Flacco ended up having a decent game anyways. And that game ended up, just going off. And it was one of those ones where I was seeing all day. It was like monsoon this, monsoon. And then I got the weather report that the rain basically stopped right before the game started. So all those guys ended up going off, at least on the Jacksonville side. But I really liked Flacco in that game. The one lineup that I had last week, because I didn't double stack Burrow, I ended up either having him with Chase or having him with Higgins, and you really needed that double stack to do well in tournaments. But I think my Flacco lineup, actually, the one that I got in, actually did better than all my Burrow lineups. Just to give you an idea of how good Flacco was last week, he scored like 30 DraftKings points, even though like the Burrow outscored him. Like Flacco was so cheap. He just, him scoring 30 DraftKings points just put you in such a good spot last week. But now we get Anthony Richardson back. Richardson is cheap. He's getting cheap at 6K. You can see he started off the season with a salary of 6,300. Then he went to 68, 67. He's back down to 6K, but I don't like this matchup for him. Tennessee's only giving up 14.4 DraftKings points a game to the quarterback position. Levis has the better matchup, but I don't trust Levis. He's coming off that shoulder injury. If Mason Rudolph had been announced the starter in this one, he would have been a freaking, like that perfect play that we're looking for, that veteran quarterback who comes in to a good matchup with weapons, and he's cheap. We could have played Mason Rudolph in this one, stacked him with, like Ridley or Hopkins, and like I would have liked that play a lot better. But Levis, I just don't, like with the shoulder injury and everything like that, I just don't trust him. Even though he has the matchup, if I was playing anyone in this game, it'd probably be the running backs, Pollard or Spears, but I like Pollard better. Spears, like I talked about with the underdog pick, Spears being getting 40% of the workload the last couple weeks, and that's not very good for Pollard. But Pollard's only at 6K. We've targeted this defense with running backs all season, and they're giving up 24.7 DraftKings points a game. If we don't trust Levis, naturally we can lean on Pollard in this matchup against a bad defense. And Pollard's good, and I also like Hopkins because Hopkins is coming off a bye now. He's been hurt all year, but he's been getting more and more workload as the year goes by, and now he's coming off a bye, and he did well against Indy last year. So he's got a history where he's done well against Indy. Used to play in Houston too, obviously, but back then is probably talking about a completely different defensive coordinator and everything like that. But last year, Hopkins did well against Indy, so he's got a track record there. I'd love Mitchell, but we got like Pittman was supposed to be out this week, but now they're saying that he seems like he's going to be okay. He was supposed to miss multiple weeks with his back injury, but all of a sudden, like Pittman is now looking like he's going to play. So Downs would have been an excellent play if Pittman was out this week. Downs would have been like a great play with this just the volume he'd get. But Mitchell is another guy that I've talked about throughout the season, but it doesn't look like he's going to be getting the opportunity we need him to get. Uh, just keep him on your radar for future reference. He gets decent separation. He was on the Jordan Vanek puts out the ass rating, something with separation. But yeah, he ranks really well on getting separation. So Mitchell at some point is going to have the opportunity to be a major breakout factor. He just doesn't have the quarterback in Richardson. We're going to need Flacco to be his quarterback. Richardson just can't throw the ball accurately enough. So look at Chargers versus Denver. This is a game that we can skip. Save us some time. There's nothing that I like in that matchup. Pittsburgh, Vegas, similar situation. I mean, Najee has a good matchup, but what's he done? Look at his performance, even when he's had the opportunity and no Jalen Warren to take away a lot of his workload. We're looking at Samir White, who's questionable. He was looking a lot closer to doubtful earlier, but now I'm not really sure what his situation is. Something to keep an eye out for. 4,900 for Zamir White, but he's not in a good matchup, and his backup would have been Madison. We're looking at 17.7 DraftKings points is what Pittsburgh's giving up to the running back position, which is bad. Bad matchup. Abdullah was getting he got a touchdown last week. It's been playing for like years and like a decade. Looking at the wideouts, Pickens, head case. I don't get that guy. He screwed us on the showdown. I had him as a captain pick, and Pickens just completely like what you gave up on the team, wasn't trying. He got like 60% 60% of the passing routes or whatever, passing downs, just like completely just shit the bed for us on a great spot. What was that game against? Playing against Dallas. He was in a great spot, and he just like the whole team, Dallas, a lot of injuries on Dallas's defense, and he just did not deliver. So I just don't know what to do with Pickens anymore. Trey Tucker's the guy that's going to get a lot of attention in this one. Jacoby Myers is out, and Adams is out. So that leaves Trey Tucker as basically the only weapon. He's $4,200 salary. This is why he's attracting so much ownership. But I've given a lot of plays that are within that salary range that might be better options than Tucker, who's going to have a lot of ownership, and he's got Aiden O'Connell throwing to him. Minshew was benched. And, the Raiders just in general are falling apart. Like I don't like those teams when I think the locker room is being, the coaches are losing the locker room. They're talking smack about the players in press conferences, and just a bad scene overall in Vegas. I just prefer to avoid this game altogether. Let other people take that Trey Tucker play. Bowers would be the other guy interesting in that one. He's going to get a lot of work his way, but Pittsburgh obviously knows that. They'll probably be putting extra attention on Bowers this week. Let's see. If we're looking at Atlanta, Carolina, this is another game that's drawing a lot of interest. Looking at a 46.5 point total with Atlanta as 6.5 point favorites in this one. Bijan should be heavily owned, rightfully so, with Carolina giving up 31.6 DraftKings points a game to the running back position. They're giving up 26.7 DraftKings points a game to wideouts, 13.3 DraftKings points a game to tight end position, and 18.8 DraftKings points a game to the quarterback position. So pick your poison there. If you think that Carolina can put up a fight against Atlanta, Atlanta's given up, the weakest against the slot and the tight end position. They're also giving up 17.3 DraftKings points a game to the quarterback. Running backs are weak against Atlanta. Atlanta's only giving up 18.4, even though Chuba Hubbard is chalk this week. I would not probably have too much exposure to Chuba Hubbard, even though he's been on fire since Andy Dalton became the quarterback. Take a look at Bijan. Bijan has been the opposite. He's been dust all year. Maybe we get that Bijan breakout this year. His price is $6,600, so he's steadily been going down in price. You got to figure that Bijan's going to break out at some point. He was dealing with an injury though for like most of the season, I believe. So Bijan, still got those lingering injury concerns. As far as the wideouts, we'd be looking at Drake London with the best matchup, 26.7 DraftKings points. Expect him to be heavily owned. I like the pivot off of London, coming off a 36-point game. See what his ownership is. It's got to be high. Yeah, 26.9. I'll take the pivot to Mooney here. Mooney, 34 DraftKings points himself last year. Let's see what his last week. Let's see what his ownership is. Mooney coming in at 20%, so it's a little bit of a discount, but price-wise, we're looking at 5,300 versus 6,700. So yeah, I'll take the price discount and the ownership discount with Mooney over London. Other than that, like Mooney and Bijan might be my the plays that I go to in this one. Pitts has a good matchup, but I'm done with Pitts at this point. On the opposite side, Deontay should be popular this week. I'm not really buying into Carolina's defense in this one. I mean, Carolina's offense in this one. Their slot receiver should have the best matchup. Let's see who their slot is these days since Thielen went down. If I'm looking at Carolina, their slot looks like it is Legette's running 34% of his routes in the slot. Mingo is 48% of his routes in the slot, but Mingo hasn't really done anything. Legette could be the guy. Let's look at the comparison in ownership between Legette and Deontay. Deontay is at 22%. And Legette is at 5.6 to give you an idea. And let's look at Legette's target share. He had a breakout a couple weeks ago when I recommended him. 19.6 DraftKings points in that game. Ended up getting 10 targets. The whole team was a mess for Chicago. I wouldn't be surprised if we see another 10 targets for Xavier Legette this week. 4,900 in this matchup, where you should run a decent amount from the slot. He kind of took over when Thielen went down, even though we've seen Mingo get a decent amount of slot work too. But let's take a look at who should have the all right, so if we're looking at the Panthers man versus zone coverage, man coverage, yeah, they're running zone at the top 3 rate. The Falcons are. So the targets versus zone, Deontay's getting 22% of the targets for zone. Legette's getting 17% of the targets for zone. So, I mean, that gives you kind of an idea of, why maybe Deontay is getting the ownership, because people seem to think that this game is going to be higher scoring. Let's check the injury report on it. See if there's maybe some defensive injuries that I'm not thinking about here. All right, if we're looking at the Falcons, looking at Troy Anderson is out. Drew Dahlman is out. The missing, well, that's from a long time ago. Yeah, I'm not really sure why why people are heavy on this game, but if you wanted to start Dalton's pretty cheap, but he's getting more expensive, and 5,200. I liked him a couple weeks ago when he was under 5K. But as he gets expensive and as he's facing tougher matchups against Chicago and Atlanta's more difficult matchup. I'm not really well, Atlanta's not too bad of a matchup. They're giving up only 17 they're giving up 17.1 DraftKings points a game to wideouts and 16.7 to slots. 11 to tight end position. So I mean, it's a middling matchup. So if Dalton's able to put up a fight against Atlanta, like we've seen him do in the past, then I don't mind it. But I think there's better spots to go to. I think I'd prefer the Rattler play to Dalton this week. I mean, you get 1,200 extra in salary. But that being said, I like Dalton. I like Dalton, what he's done with this offense, and I don't hate going there if you like the play this week. Detroit versus Dallas is another game that should be a pretty decent game. Prescott 6,700 is pretty affordable, and he obviously has the upside to deliver for us. Goff, coming off a bye week, he was perfect in his last game, 18 for 18 against Seattle. But Seattle, keep in mind, was missing half their defense in that matchup. And they were running the ball very effectively as well. I think in this game, Dallas has got a lot of injuries themselves on their defense. As far as let's take a look at the matchup. Detroit's giving up 18.5 DraftKings points a game to the quarterback position, whereas Dallas is giving up 17.7. So it gives you an idea of the quarterback matchups. Dallas is also giving up 25.9 DraftKings points a game to running backs. So Gibbs and Montgomery are definitely in play this week, especially with Detroit liking to run that ball. If the game shoots out a bit, which it could, because Detroit's secondary is terrible. Detroit has been giving up 22.7 DraftKings points a game to wideouts. They gave up 23.2 DraftKings points a game to the slots, and that's where we've been targeting Detroit all year. And now we got CeeDee Lamb in that matchup, and CeeDee Lamb, of course, is a slot receiver. So really good matchup for CeeDee Lamb. One of my favorite plays on the slate. I don't hate doing the CeeDee Lamb, Jahmyr Gibbs, or David Montgomery pairing there. Dallas does not have a good tight end matchup, even though I'm seeing Ferguson love this week, but Detroit's only giving up 8.1 DraftKings points a game to the tight end position. I'd probably go with Tolbert and Lamb over Ferguson. But CeeDee Lamb, Probably one of my favorite plays on the slate. He really hasn't delivered this year either, which is good because that's going to keep his ownership in check. And we take a look at his ownership, that and his salary. Looking at about 14% owned for CD Lamb, which is really not horrible considering the matchup and the total of this game. Lamb could easily deliver for us. Tolbert, cheaper option at $5K. 10 targets last week, put up 21 DraftKings points, so capable of delivering a decent game, especially at $5K. Could get you 4 times your money, or 4 times your investment. So those are the those are the plays basically. As far as running backs, not a good matchup for Dowdle this week. Not really a fan of Dowdle this week against that Detroit run defense. Really good run defense there. Gibbs, I like Gibbs like every week. Gibbs has been getting the red zone touches too, by the way. Versus Montgomery. Montgomery has not been getting as much red zone targets, but he scored a touchdown in, I believe, 7 straight games, something like that. So Montgomery's getting a ton of touchdowns, but he's very touchdown dependent as well. I think Gibbs is probably safer play. He's supposed to get a more passing rate. No targets in the last 2 games, though. 7 targets in week 2, 6 targets in week 1. Has Montgomery been getting those targets? 1 and 3, 4 and 1. So he's gotten more targets than Gibbs the last couple weeks. So something to keep in mind. So let's go start building this lineup. Make sure to hit that like button. Give me the 30 likes so I can put out the shorter video closer to lock. I'll be putting out a video on the London game too at some point. I'm going to try to at least a short video. Keep an eye out on that. If you guys have reserved your lineups, you're going to want to do that pretty soon here because those contests fill up pretty quick with it being 8:30 in the morning. Actually, I guess 7:30 Eastern. So let's build this lineup. Make sure to hit the subscribe button too. Help me get to 2,000 subscribes. I'm at about a little over 1,000 now. I want to get to 1,100 within the next week or so. So hit the subscribe button, sign up for the alerts so you know when those short videos are coming out. All right, so let's start off with a quarterback here. Let's do the fun one first. Let's get Rattler in there. Going to give us 4K. I'm going to run him naked. I don't want to stack him with anybody. I don't know who to stack him with other than Kamara, who's not in a bad matchup. But I'm going to go against that. I'm going to go with Bucky Irving. Going to take that salary savings. Give me a Barkley and Henry. Pairing there. I'm going to take a look at defense now. Give me some salary savings. I like the Bucks. I don't mind running the Bucks against Rattler. Could be one of those situations where Rattler does enough on the ground to make up for to get us the points that we need. Where he can throw a couple interceptions, maybe a pick 6 or something, and I don't care. So we're looking at 5,400 for the remaining guys. If we want to try to get in, I think we might be able to squeeze in Lamb in this lineup too. One thing that I forgot to mention as far as another cheap guy is in that Carolina game is Jatavian Sanders. Tommy Tremble is out. And Jatavian Sanders, we've seen, got 5 targets in that last game against Chicago. He was a hyped-up rookie. He was hyped up in the draft. People were calling him like the like beyond Bowers, he was like the next tight end that everybody loved. Hasn't done anything yet this season, but he's been kind of buried in the depth chart. But now he gets his opportunity in a game against a team that's given up 11 DraftKings points a game to the tight end position. So it's a favorable matchup for him. $2,600. Let's put him in our lineup. Jatavian Sanders at 2,600. I think he can pay off for us potentially. I'm going to get some representation from that Baltimore game in here. Some more representation, I should say. Bateman was a cheap guy that I like. It's going to leave us with 6,500 for a wide receiver. We get Flowers in there. We got Henry already. So we're a little heavy on Baltimore there. Let's get McLaurin in there. Yeah. So this way, with Rattler, we've been able to get the Barkley, Henry, like double stud in there. We got the correlation in that Baltimore game that I like a lot. We've got McLaurin, Bateman, Henry, all in there. We got Barkley. We got Bucky Irving, who I like. And he also correlates with Spencer Rattler. We got the Bucks D going against our quarterback. And we got Jatavian Sanders as our punt in the tight end position. This is a lineup I think, it could be, like a fun one to play. If Spencer Rattler ends up getting us like 20 DraftKings points and, we get a hit from Sanders and all these guys do what they should do in their matchups, then, that'd be a fun one. All right, let's go with a higher end one. I'm going to go with Jaden Daniels. I'm going to stack him with McLaurin. I like that pairing this week. I think McLaurin's got a good matchup. Let's run it back with Derrick Henry. Let's see if we can get Barkley in this one too. Let's go with defense. Let's stick with that Bucks D. And let's put Bucky in there. Leaves us with 4K per guy. Let's go with our cheap Sanders punt. Leaves us with 4,700. Let's go with Bateman again. 5,400 for our last remaining spot. Kind of looking at guys like Mooney, who I like. Hopkins. I like Hopkins. Tolbert. Judy, the guy I was talking about. Leggett. A lot of options there to close this one out. If we went with, let's say we go with Leggett and we take Sanders out. Let's see what that would get us. It's going to leave us with 3,100. So if we wanted to go 3,100 at that tight end position, don't see a whole lot there. Yeah, don't see a whole lot there. I'd want to try to get up to Auden in that situation or Ertz. But, I think I preferred that other direction better. So, there's a couple options for this week. I think a lot of people will not enough people will be going the Jaden Daniels route this week, which is good. Detroit, Dallas will be a high-scoring game. I don't have any representation of those guys in this lineup, so maybe we switch it up a little bit here. Maybe we get rid of Henry. Let's put Gibbs in. Leaves us with 9K. I want to run it back with somebody. So if I want to run it back with somebody on the Dallas side, let's put Lamb in there if we can. Yeah, no, we can't do that. May have to take Barkley out of this one. Let's put Irving in there. All right, so we got Daniels to McLaurin. We got Bateman on the other side. Gibbs, Irving, Lamb. We got Gibbs, Lamb for that Dallas game. Let's get a tight end in there. If we wanted to go with our cheap guy, get Jatavian in there. It's going to leave us with 6K. 6K gets us close to Bijan. Where's Bijan? We need 600 more to get to Bijan. But 6K in this spot for our flex. You see what kind of options we have with like Pollard, Bowers, Dowdle if you wanted to go there. Harris. Couple of these other options like Eckler. I'd probably go Eckler, honestly. Give me another guy to stack with Daniels. Let's see. Let's try something different here. Let's get rid of Bateman. Let's put in Flowers. If we put Lamb in, what does that leave us? 3,600. All right, so 3,600 in the flex. So we got Daniels to McLaurin, running it back with Flowers. We got Bucky Irving tied with his defense. We got Sanders. Let's look at our 3,600 flex options. You got Polk with Drake May coming in. Oh, we got Aguilar as an option. Give us another guy in that Baltimore stack. Otten, if you wanted to run two tight ends. Tim Patrick. If you want more exposure to that game. So there's some good options in that 3,600 range. Scroll a little bit more, see. Xavier Hutchinson might be interesting. Probably getting more work with the injury situation in Houston. Other than that, I don't really see too much else. Yeah, so you guys can figure it out from there. But thanks for watching. Make sure to hit that like button. Give me the 30 likes so we can put out the shorter video later on. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. Looking for 1,100 subscribers within the the near future. On my way to 2,000 subscribers by the end of the season. I definitely appreciate that. I appreciate you guys watching. Stay tuned for I'm going to try to get the show out for the international game. Spent the day building a foosball table for my kid, so that's why I'm delivering this show late today. So, I'll try to get that international one up at some point in the morning. So if you guys have your lineups reserved already, you can check that out. See if we can find some good plays in that one. All right, guys, thanks for watching.